So, in this chapter, we are sort of like finishing up on the sculpting part. So you can see we've subdivided it locally around the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. This is just to get more resolution, but also to allow us to still subdivide it further. So whenever we do subdivide it, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth will be subdivided a little more compared to the rest. Because this, realistically, this is where most of your focus and most of your details are going to be. So here, it's starting to add detail. It's to a point now where pretty satisfied with where we're at. The eyes are sort of like being left alone until the expression chapter. So, look forward to that. But everything around the eyes and all the other features they're at a point now where we can actually start detailing them. Now we have talked about the color book reference or color book analogy. Now most things have been colored or have been like outlined. So now it's about coloring things in.
And you can see here now that when everything has been done so methodically, doing this kind of stuff isn't that hard, because now it's more about refining it.
Yeah.
It's not about, this is really not that tricky compared to the first chapters.
No.
If the first chapters are done right, then, or the first stages,
yeah,
then everything else just kind of follows. But this is also so important.
Yeah.
You really need this step here in order to get just to get everything to flow nicely into each other.
There's still going to be some small shape refinements. Probably the lips.
What?
I think around some parts of the neck as well. There will be some parts of the shapes that still need a little bit of tweaking. But at this stage, it's still okay. It's never not okay to tweak, because as long as you're not changing it drastically, you're not making a completely different person at this point in the process, that's totally fine. But tweaking small things like how the lids, how open are they, how closed are they, what's the position of the eyebrows, a little bit of the shape on the mouth or something like the chin, I think that's still fine to do at this point.
Yeah, and also what you're doing now is mostly shape changes.
Yeah.
They're basically what you could do in a production with a blend shape.
Yeah.
You're not adding anything new. You're not adding a new eye, or you're just modifying the points which are there.
Yeah.
Basically, all the data is there. It's just a bit messy.
Yeah. And again, this is where your life would be so much easier if you had a eyeball for mesh instead of having it be part of your mesh.
That is true.
Yeah.
I like that every single time you say that, and every single time you do the same thing. It's not even a mistake, though.
No, I'm very deliberate about it. Adding this puffiness under the eye is sort of it's a cutifier.
Yeah.
You add a little bit more cuteness to it. You see that especially in Asian makeup, where they sort of some actually add tape underneath their eye bags or underneath their eyes to make this little bag to just give the appearance of having an eye that's actually bigger than it is.
So weird to me.
Some of it's pure makeup. You can have a little highlight down there. I just to do it in pure form.
Real-time liquefying.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be interesting once we have AR goggles. If you can actually do that, you can have real-time liquefying.
Yeah.
You could pay so that everyone would regard you with smoother skin.
You can see here, this is part of the stylization that Henning talked about before as well. My lids are thicker than they would be in real life.
Yeah.
That's a very conscious decision to make sure that it catches a little more highlight and a little more shadow than it probably would normally. It's just a way to emphasize the contrast in the eyes.
Because there's so little contrast in the rest of the head here.
Yeah.
It's basically nothing. A lot of times, particularly if you're doing somebody older, like an older man or something, there's contrast everywhere, tiny plane changes all over the place.
Yeah.
But in this character, you have the nostrils, the mouth, the eyes, and the ears. And then you have some undulation in between, but basically you have very little going on.
Yeah.
So by making the eyes stronger right now, they're going to just be even more prominent.
And here, you can also see that because we're kind of locked to a set of shapes now, so you don't want to diverge too far from it. So whenever we're adding additional details to it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You You can't be certain 100% of the time that when you're adding a wrinkle, it's just going to look right the first time. So sometimes there's a lot of back and forth, like, oh, do that, undo it again. Do it, undo it again. I'm a little... Ignore the eyes. They're going to change. Well, the eyeball is going to change. So
yeah, the stuff we've been working on now for the last 10 minutes, just ignore.
So the lid and everything is there. That will stay the same. It's just the eye itself.
Whenever I'm sculpting this as well, in terms of just pure pressure on the tablet, I keep it very light.
Yeah.
Just indication, very light intensity. Obviously, what you're doing now, you need some more because you're actually changing some forms. Yeah. But in general, when doing this, I'm just refining it. I'm just going over everything and just refining it with very low intensity.
Yeah. And here it's trying to age the model a little bit and add some personality to the sculpt, so it's not just a perfect sculpt.
Yeah.
But without trying to age it too much. It's a very, very fine balance between the two.
Something like a 16-year-old girl in terms of pure aesthetics is very boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's basically nothing. There's no age in the face. So if you can just add a bit of weight to it, it just looks a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends entirely on what you're going for.
Yeah. And the same here with the brow. I opted for something that's more shape rather than detail. There's a slight indication of hair, like hair detail, but I felt that having a more shape-based eyebrow was nicer looking and more appealing than having something maybe like too bushy, for example.
So important to have eyebrows.
Yeah.
People forget them all the time. I know I keep saying this, but that's because people forget them all the time.
Like, you'd be surprised, actually, how many people forget it.
Yeah, like go and shave your own eyebrows off, and you're going to see how important they are.
That's pretty weird looking without eyebrows. This part here, the same with the lid, also changes depending on your expression. So if you move your eyes from side to side, you're moving some of that volume, because as soon as you move your eyeball, that sort of shifts your lid a little bit, and then that starts to push on the fat pads above where your eyebrow is.
Again, all these subtle little things, they come from observation.
Yeah, exactly.
How the hell are you supposed to know that when you move your eyelid, when you move your eyes from one side to another, that actually moves the fat pads around your eyes?
Yeah.
You can actually see, I mean, a good example to see this is, it's not strictly speaking realistic, but it's like rigging reels. You can see that oftentimes when they move their eyes around, they've added like a secondary animation around the eyes, so that if they move the eye up, there is animation there.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that has been stylized. But at least you can see it very clearly. Ooh, I love this.
Okay, so I'm going to go on a limb here and say I think this is the final tweak to the shape of the lips.
Yeah,
so we're still doing some detailing on the lips in a little bit, but these are like some final small tweaks in terms of how the shape is. It's generally the same as in the start of this chapter, but it's just some small differences in the different volumes that are in the lip that kind of change what the lip looks like.
I find male lips versus female lips to be so different. Sure, they have the same overall structure, but if you want something feminine, you want to make them really nice and lush, and maybe have like a contouring line around them just to define the edge of it. Very different from a proportional point of view. Ooh, what are you doing now?
I think I'm shortening the neck. I think that's what's about to happen. Because at this point, I was looking at some different references, and I started to realize there was actually a big gap from the clavicle down, or from the neck, the chin down to the clavicle. So I wanted to shorten that neck a little bit, make her a little more stubby, and then also take some of the detail in the neck away to give that, because there's a little bit of an indication of an Adam's apple there. It wasn't so much, I didn't think about it so much as an Adam's apple, more the esophagus that sort of protrudes a little bit, because you can have necks on the front. even for women, are not completely straight. They will tend to bulge out just a little bit where your esophagus is. But I ran into the issue that it just looked a little more manly because of it. So I got rid of that again. And something that's actually really important is just the indication of the shoulders and the clavicles. Just because it's, even though it has nothing to do with the face per se, it's still connected to the head. And you will see it in the gesture, and you will see it, even if you're just looking at most of the face, it still does a lot for your model. So it's something that I would recommend putting in when you're sculpting. And we're not doing any boobs for this because it serves no purpose. Sorry about that.
That was what I was looking forward to the most. I was going to see how you solve that.
There's a small indication of some pecs with a little bit of fat on top, just going down towards where the breast would be. But I didn't see a point in adding breast for this.
You should just have them hanging out a little bit.
Yeah, but I've seen that. It always looks so weird
when you. So weird
because then you have like it's basically like this armature, and then it cuts off under the breast.
Yeah,
and it's like. What purpose does that serve other than to just be a boob?
Yeah,
that's why it was there.
Yeah, because boobs are very feminine, and it has no purpose.
That's sculpting the face. How to make it more feminine?
Add a boob.
Add a boob.
As you all know, secret to making something feminine.
Yeah. No, so I felt that was pointless.
Yeah.
So you can see, like, kind of the shape is building towards the boob, but I felt there was no point in being
keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. Also didn't have to bother with that.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic.
We should have a tutorial on just sculpting boobs, actually.
Boobage.
This part is actually interesting, where the lid transitions from, in the lower lid, where it transitions into the inner part of the eye like this. You can see it's very sharp on the actual lid itself, but it tends to soften off a little bit more when we get into this little triangular area. Adding a caruncula helps you settle your eye in the eye socket a little better.
Yeah, that's just the tear duct area, basically. Yeah. People forget that all the time, and we keep saying in the videos, people forget it all the time. It's because people forget it all the time. You have a really nice highlight usually in a caruncula, just because it's so wet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moisture there, keeping your eye nice and moist.
And here you can actually see that from when we first started talking about the nose a couple of chapters ago, it's actually gotten a lot wider. It's gotten far away from that plasticky look, plastic surgery look that I wasn't a fan of, and that would actually involve me just making it a lot thicker. And I didn't think I was gonna like it, but I ended up actually sticking with it because I thought it looked a lot better.
I like this, what you're adding now. Just the bit of bagginess to it.
It's just a little bit, Yeah. So it's not so...
breaks the plane, makes it just... Not even necessarily look older, just a bit more natural.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit older, but...
Yeah, just add maybe like a few years in difference between a 16-year-old here and then. Someone who was... I was thinking, like we talked about, maybe we're approaching mid or late 20s for this... Because when you look at real people, I mean, even this one, once we're done and everything, she's still very perfect compared to a normal person, just because there's just so many factors that plays in how you age, and getting that level of fidelity in there, you would just need a lot more detail.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see somebody who's taking a picture of themselves for like 100 years, basically the same person, and you could just see detailed how that person would age.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone does that.
Yeah.
I've seen people do it over like, here's 5 years. The most I've seen is like 8 or 10, I think.
Yeah. It's very interesting to seeing just those, but it's kind of shame as well, because they started like, I think it was one from like, which is kind of like 15 years or something now.
Yeah.
They started when digital cameras were kind of shitty, so the first photos are not that great.
Yeah.
I would love to see someone doing a photo scan of themselves over years.
I actually have 2 of myself, 5 years spaced apart, I think. I don't know where they are.
You should 3D print them.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be creepy. And then just watch yourself age. One thing that's important here for the lips is that, which I don't know, maybe people know about this, but the kind of wrinkles that appear on your upper lip and lower lip are different. They don't wrinkle in the same way.
No.
It's like your lower lip has a tendency to just have more vertical wrinkles that sort of like go out from the lip. Which your upper lip can actually have two set of wrinkles. There's like the inner wrinkle and the outer tinier wrinkles. So very weird fact.
And the way we know this is observation.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't go to like wrinklefacts.com to learn more about that. It's just, I've seen as well with sometimes the upper lip is very wrinkled and the bottom lip has basically nothing, and vice versa. I mean, just so much variation. And it can be a bit hard to look at this on photos as well. But scans, they reveal this like crazy.
Yeah.
Because photos, there's so much color, there's so much red in it. Maybe they're obscuring it. There might be a lot of lipstick going on, whatever. But scans, again.
Yeah.
Scans don't care about makeup.
No, they really don't.
They fool your eye, but damn it, they don't fool the scanner.
Especially for bigger lips. Interesting fact about lips actually is that your lips are unable to sweat. I think it's like the only part on your face or something that doesn't perspirate. So that's why you can you lick your lip when it's dry. It doesn't become moist by itself. That's why on bigger lips you also tend to see more cracking if someone's like outside a lot, for example. That has it's really rough on the lips, especially the bigger they are.
I'm curious why that is. Why you don't sweat on the lips?
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably a very good reason.
It's probably a very good reason.
Evolution normally doesn't just do stuff at random. It doesn't pull pranks on you.
Yeah, why you don't? I don't know.
If only we had some kind of search engine database.
Yeah. I love this stage. Yeah. This is my favorite part to be at. Now that I'm comfortable in the sculpt and I can start to, with good conscience, I can subdivide it. Because I know when I subdivide it, that's when I go into my detail zone. And that's where I have the most fun, I think. Because that's where you can really start to get more out of your character. Obviously, all the fundamentals and everything, the base defines what the face and the skull looks like. But I think here is where you can start to enhance the personality of your sculpture.
I also enjoy it as well because that's when it becomes a bit easier.
Yeah,
I find the first stages to honestly be really hard.
Yeah,
and if those aren't going right, you might as well just trash and start over again. But when you're detailing, then at least on a good foundation, that's when I put on my podcasts.
Yeah,
and that's when I can just sit for days and just refine this. There isn't really a limit to how much you can define something like this. I mean, there are people who they sculpt everything, the pores and everything. And even though this is supposed to be a very appealing person, you if you were going for realism, you're still gonna have tons of pores on something like this. It's not because you're a woman you don't have pores. That's tons of that.
Women, I think. Okay, here's a maybe fact for you. I think tend to have smaller pores as well.
I've observed that, yeah.
Compared to men, okay, yeah.
But you can still see, but that might also just be, I've looked at more female faces.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be like the sample size that I've looked at, the women just happen to have smaller pores. I don't know. Myself, I have quite big pores on my face and the rest of my body, I guess. So using me as a reference for if I'm sculpting a woman, she would have quite
terrible idea.
Yeah, big pores.
This is also different between different races as well. Where if you look at a lot of Chinese people, they have very tiny pores, very smooth skin, and then a lot of brutish Europeans who can have very big pores.
Maybe we need to sweat more. Do you sweat through the pores? Is that how you sweat?
I have no idea how this.
I actually don't know how it works.
I feel I should probably know this.
Yeah, but
sweats through the skin part
somewhere. Maybe you just sweat throughout your entire skin.
Now all our audiences are just being like, you idiots.
Explain to me like I'm 5.
How does a whale drink water?
Yeah, that again.
So satisfying, this stage.
Yeah. Again, the same with the lips as in this case with the eyebrows. The standard brush is perfect for these kinds of tasks.
It really is.
Because it keeps your underlying form. Like you can still preserve detail that you've already sculpted with your standard brush. I don't know how it does it. It just does it by magic, I think. So it's excellent. Like we used it for the actual hair, but also facial hair. And the same with small wrinkles on the lips or wrinkles from the eyes. It does a really, really good job with that. I think the standard brush is really underrated for those, well, just in general. Which is funny.
Yes, this is called the standard brush. Yeah, I use my clay brushes for basically everything, but like Morten said, it has the problem that it overrides what's there, while the standard brush respects the overall undulation.
And again, remember to look at your reference pretty often, not just now and again. And I would never really sculpt anything without having my reference on the screen somewhere. Just because it forces you to look at it at some point. Unless you're like crazy tunnel vision and 3 hours into your sculpt, you're like, oh, right, I have reference, I forgot.
I also have on my desk, I have a little skull. I have a skull with anatomy features on it, like real size human. Thanks, Mom. It's a Christmas present 1 year.
I made it sound like it was your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
No, it is not my mom.
Yeah. It's a skull that's cast.
Yes, exactly. It's really, really helpful to have something like that.
Here you can see the difference in the treatment that the upper and the lower lip get in terms of how the wrinkles are. At least I hope that's clear from this. One thing that can help you separate that is also having these striations that go not just vertically down, but also across the lip.
Yeah.
Not just as a contour, because that one is also present, especially on the upper lip, but just having a small, like a little indication of striation that goes across the lip like that. And there's actually, if you like find some macro photography of lips, there's some crazy amount of detail in there.
Yeah, there really is. There is so much compression in the lips. Probably more compression there in most places on the body. Because every single time you talk, open your mouth, do anything, there is compression happening.
Like right here, you can see that second part of details I was talking about in terms of how the upper part of the upper lip can wrinkle in a different way. This isn't present on everyone, mind you. It just happens on some people. So if it fits for your sculpt, this is definitely something you should try and experiment with.
And people also have a different frequency as well on their lips. Yep. Some people have way more low frequency, just meaning that they have more bigger shapes. And some people have way smoother with more like the high frequency, meaning just like the subtle lines on top, the sharp lines on top, which are a lot smaller.
And actually, sort of like by design, what we talked about with the standard brush and the clay brushes, that's something that I'm using for the lips as well. I'll tend to carve in everything very aggressively, and then I'll go in with a clay buildup or clay brush, maybe a smooth brush, and then I'll actually go in and erase part of the form again. Just so like I'll sort of like, I'm filling in some of the cracks a little bit, basically.
Yeah, just balancing a bit up. Yeah, that's something which I learned really just in the last few years when it comes to texturing, that when it comes to pores or whatever it might be of these kind of details, less is really more. We had this in a film we worked on recently where we just went crazy with details because it required that. But the moment we actually took away the details, we took away most details, it really just looked so much better. Like it looked more detailed with less details. It was really paradoxical. But the point is, you really want to balance this kind of stuff. You don't want, same with the hair as well, we talked about, you don't want strokes everywhere. You just want them in select places.
And a little note here for the lower lip wrinkles, you can see how they kind of fan out from the center. That's probably how you would treat them. So not just have them be vertical from like this direction of the face, but actually have them fan out because it's a circular shape. So just follow the form essentially.
I think it's so relaxing just to watch somebody sculpt like this.
Yeah.
Even when it's yourself.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It feels like so long ago. And here, this is where I start to go in with the clay buildup brush, and I start to... I'm still building up some volume here because I'm using the clay buildup brush, but I'm going in and erasing some of the harsher details in the lips that made it look a little too... a little like as she had too dry lips, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, too dry lips wouldn't look very nice at all. This is also where the environmental factors matters a lot as well. If you're out in the cold a lot, like somebody from Scandinavia, I've experienced my fair share of cold winters, and your lips just crack like crazy. But if you've been born and raised in California, you might have very different lips.
Yeah.
Just based on that. Not necessarily like after this stuff resets. But in the moment, if you are in a cold Oslo winter versus a hot Californian summer, stuff like that would definitely be different.
Again, it's like the lips, it's the same thing as with the hair. That's because there's actually a lot of detail in the lips there. That's where you want to start to break your symmetry when you're at this stage. Because otherwise your symmetry becomes very apparent and you don't really want that.
Yeah.
Changing the position of your pupil is actually also a way to change the sort of expression on your model. It doesn't work for me in this case, but I wanted to experiment with it. It is something that you can place around to the side and the center because it gives direction to the eye. Sometimes it looks creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's just looking off slightly to the side.
Yeah.
Or one of these which is always looking at you. You have some paintings of that, which wherever you are, it's always looking at you.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they're alive.
Like a Harry Potter painting.
Oh, yeah. Another thing you can do for the lids here and the sort of connection to the brow is that sometimes it can be hard to sculpt that subtle form between like those two plane changes. You can go in with your the inflate brush and just inflate the two if you want the lid to be closer to the brow, basically. It's a more lazy way to do it, but if it works, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, with the whole lacy kind of way, I mean, I'm all for that. You're working in ZBrush. You're already cheating. You might as well. It's not. If you use any brush here, it's fine.
As soon as you open ZBrush, you're cheating.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Because what the hell does cheating mean anyway?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, it's like there's some kind of judge.
Yeah, the realism judge.
Yes, on the internet. He will send you angry letters if he sees that you used the wrong brush, damn it. Yeah, cheating would rather be like lying. Like if you're going for a job and you're applying with this kind of stuff, with this head, and you're like, yeah, I sculpted from a sphere, and they would be like, nice, you clearly know your anatomy. Or if you were just be like, yeah, I reprojected some topology onto a scan, and they would be like, all right, that was easy. So don't do that.
Don't be a liar.
Don't be a liar. Unless you get the job.
And then learn on the job afterwards.
Yeah, really fast.
Really fast, yeah.
Yeah, I think the eyes are starting to really come together now.
Now we just need that last pesky part, which is the actual eye.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, because you might be looking at this for 3 chapters and then be like, dude, you're done. Yeah, but
you're never really done.
You're never really done. And but also, if you were to look at you might look at it from 3 chapters and go like, yeah, this looks pretty finished. But compare that to now.
Yeah,
it's one of these you can't necessarily say why it's better.
Yeah,
but it is. Everything is more refined, more balanced, and everything.
Here, for any sort of eagle eye viewers, you're also noticing that I'm sort of sometimes turning on and off symmetry. Like if I know I have a part that I can just sculpt on one side and it transfers to both sides really nicely, then I'll enable symmetry again. The closer I get to the center line, then I'll start disabling symmetry again. Just because at this stage, any sort of fine detail is going to really stand out to you. It's really going to pop out that you've just sculpted it with symmetry on.
Yeah, particularly if you're doing something like a pimple or like a mole or something like that kind of stuff. Because you would never have that symmetrically.
Oh, I should have added a mole to her. That's a good point.
You can do it for marketing images.
Yeah.
We would never do that.
Doctor the images after the tutorial.
What?
That's preposterous.
Who would do such a thing? Yeah, it kind of sucks when you demo a tutorial and you're like, man, this will look so much better.
Yeah. That's also the difference between doing a personal piece and doing something for a tutorial.
Yeah.
You have to be a lot more concise, and like your decision has to be kind of final.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing something for a tutorial.
Yes, I mean, we're still going a bit back and forth, but not nearly as much as for a personal project. Personal project, this might have taken 10 times as long and gone through 14 different phases. Might not look better, though. It's a good limitation to have. Yeah, it's kind of like somebody's looking over your shoulder while you're working.
Yeah.
But in the future.
And again, I think the view from below is one of those highly underrated views, especially at this point as well, where we know most of our forms are working. It's a really good view to correct, especially the eyes, maybe the nose, and also the mouth can still, be tweaked if you want to do that. Not that I would ever tweak the mouth excessively.
I think it's funny the way you're saying like the underrated. Like I totally agree. It's just it's like there is a list of the best views for a model.
we should make a free video. The most underrated views for models.
Forbes magazine has rated the 3/4 as the best view on second year again.
Yeah. You want to try and keep your eyelid fairly similar in terms of thickness all the way around. The eyelid doesn't really vary that much in terms of thickness. Maybe a little bit at the edges, a tiny bit, but mostly it'll be the same thickness. Definitely getting there now. You can see, like, at this point, it's very much the struggle of, okay, looking at some reference, going back, seeing, okay, what can be improved now? And because most of the things at this stage are, they're like beyond subtleties now. I feel like they're very, very subtle.
And they're so subjective as well.
Yeah, it could just be me that think that these changes made the model better.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tweak this forever.
Yeah. And here's an example of where, I want to go in and try to add some of the details asymmetrically. So just to vary a little bit on the eyes, just to make sure that there's at least some parts of it that the left and the right eye, they don't share. This just helps to sell the model a little bit more.
It's one of these you might not be able to consciously tell, but your brain does.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can actually be fairly conservative when it comes to that part in terms of adding asymmetry to your model. But every little bit helps.